Something strange happened to humans in the last 100 years. We invented a new kind of suffering that didn't exist before. Not physical pain. We've always had that. Not grief or loss. Those are as old as humanity itself. No, we invented something more subtle, more pervasive, something that follows us everywhere and never quite lets us rest. We call it anxiety. But here's what's fascinating. The ancient world, the Greeks, the Romans, the Buddhists, the Taoists, they didn't have a word for what we call anxiety. They had words for fear, yes, for worry about specific threats. But this constant gnawing sensation that something is wrong even when everything is fine, this background hum of unease that colors every moment of modern life, they didn't have that. And before you think it's because their lives were simpler or easier, remember, they watched their children die from diseases we cured centuries ago. They lived through wars, famines, plagues. They had no technology, no medicine, no comfort that we take for granted. Their lives were objectively harder in almost every measurable way. Yet they didn't suffer from the epidemic of anxiety that's drowning our world today. So what changed? What do we have that they didn't? Or what did they have that we lost? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about meditation apps or breathing exercises or positive thinking. It's something much deeper, something about how we relate to our own minds. The ancients understood something fundamental about the nature of thought that we've completely forgotten. And once you see it, anxiety doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it transforms completely. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, as you're watching this, there's probably some background worry running in your mind. Maybe it's about work, or money, or a relationship, or your health, or just a vague sense that something isn't quite right. Notice how it's always there, like a radio playing in another room. You can ignore it sometimes, but it never fully turns off. Now here's the key question the ancients asked. What is that worry actually about? Not the surface story. I'm worried about my presentation tomorrow, or I'm anxious about my finances. Go deeper. What is the actual threat? Most modern anxiety isn't about what's happening right now. It's about what might happen. It's about the future. A future that doesn't exist yet and might never exist. Your body is responding to a story your mind is telling about tomorrow, next week, next year. And that story feels so real, so urgent, that your nervous system treats it like a current threat. But here's what the ancients saw. The future isn't real. It's not happening. It's a concept, a mental construction, a story. Nothing that you're worried about is actually occurring in this moment. In this actual moment, right now, as you read these words, are you okay? Not, will you be okay tomorrow? But right now, in the only time that actually exists, are you safe? Most of the time, the answer is yes. You're breathing, you're alive, you're here. The catastrophe exists only in thought, only in the story about what might happen. But your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. When your mind conjures up a disaster scenario, your body reacts as if it's happening now. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, stress hormones flood through, all for something that isn't actually occurring. The ancient masters saw this clearly. They watched their own minds generate these stories of future disaster and recognized them for what they were: mental weather, passing clouds in the sky of consciousness. They didn't try to stop the thoughts or positive think them away. They simply stopped believing them so completely. This is the part that modern psychology often misses. We've been taught to manage anxiety, to cope with it, to reduce it through various techniques. But that approach assumes anxiety is the problem. The ancients saw something different. They saw that anxiety itself isn't the issue. It's our relationship to it. It's the fact that we believe the stories, identify with the worry, think that the mental weather is who we are. Think about physical weather for a moment. When it rains, you don't take it personally. You don't think, I am raining. Or, this rain means something is wrong with me. You recognize that weather happens, it passes, and it has nothing to do with your fundamental okayness. The ancients had the same relationship to mental weather. Anxious thoughts would arise. Of course they would. The mind generates thoughts constantly, but they didn't become them. They watched them the way you watch clouds drift across the sky. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. Now let's look at how anxiety actually builds itself. Because once you see the mechanics, you stop being so scared of it. Anxiety is like a fire. It needs fuel to keep burning. And the fuel is your attention, your belief, your resistance to it. Here's how it works. A thought appears. What if I fail? Just a thought, no different from, what if I have pasta for dinner? But this thought has emotional charge. Your body responds with a slight tension, a flutter in the chest. Now comes the crucial moment, the moment that determines whether this becomes anxiety or just passes through. If you notice the thought and let it be, it fades. Thoughts are like that. They arise, they pass, they disappear. But most of us don't let them pass. We grab onto them. We start engaging. Yes, what if I fail? I probably will fail. I always fail. Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Now the thought has company. It's multiplying, creating a whole narrative, building a story. And with each thought in the chain, your body responds more. The slight tension becomes tightness. The flutter becomes a knot. Your breathing gets shallow. Now you notice these physical sensations and they become more evidence. See, I'm anxious. Something is definitely wrong. I need to figure this out. I need to fix this. This is the trap. The more you engage with anxiety, trying to solve it or understand it or get rid of it, the more solid it becomes. Because anxiety isn't a thing that exists independently. It's something you're actively creating moment by moment through attention and belief. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. The ancients saw this clearly. They recognized that resistance is what keeps suffering alive, not the initial pain or discomfort. That's just sensation, just experience arising. But the layer you add on top, this shouldn't be happening. I need to make this stop. What's wrong with me for feeling this? That layer is where the real suffering lives. Watch a child cry. They're completely in it, total immersion in the emotion. But 5 minutes later, they're laughing, playing, completely fine. They didn't resist the emotion or try to manage it. They just felt it fully, and it passed through. Adults have lost this capacity. We think we need to control our internal experience, manage our emotions, make sure we're feeling the right things. But trying to control anxiety is like trying to control the weather. You can't. The more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. And the anxiety just keeps doing what anxiety does, rising and falling according to its own nature. What you can change is your relationship to it. You can stop seeing it as the enemy and start seeing it as just another experience passing through. Here's where it gets interesting. When you stop fighting anxiety, when you stop trying to fix it or figure it out or get rid of it, something unexpected happens. Not right away. This isn't a quick trick. But gradually, you notice that anxiety doesn't have the same grip. It can still arise, but it's like background noise instead of a siren. It's there, you're aware of it, but you're not consumed by it. This is because anxiety feeds on your fear of it. When you're no longer afraid of being anxious, when you stop catastrophizing about the catastrophizing, the whole structure starts to weaken. You're not giving it the attention and belief it needs to maintain itself. Think about it this way. Anxiety is a protection mechanism. Your mind is trying to keep you safe by constantly scanning for threats, playing out worst-case scenarios, preparing you for disaster. It's like an overprotective parent who won't let you leave the house because something bad might happen out there. The parent means well, but the protection becomes a prison. When you fight this mechanism, you're basically telling your mind, yes, anxiety is dangerous. We need to be very concerned about being anxious. And your mind, which is just trying to protect you, thinks, okay, noted. I'll be even more vigilant about this anxiety thing. I'll watch for it constantly and warn you when it appears. So, you've just given it a new threat to monitor, anxiety itself, and the loop deepens. But when you stop fighting, when you acknowledge anxiety with a kind of gentle indifference, oh, there you are again, that's fine, you can be here. The mind starts to relax. It realizes anxiety isn't actually dangerous. It's just an uncomfortable sensation, a pattern of thought, a temporary state, nothing that needs emergency action. The ancients called this acceptance, but not in the defeated sense we usually think of. Not I give up, I'll just suffer forever. But acceptance in the sense of allowing what's already here to be here. Not resisting reality, not fighting with this moment as it is. This is the secret that unlocks everything. Because here's the paradox. When you truly accept anxiety, when you stop trying to make it go away, it often does go away, or at least loses its intensity. Not because you used acceptance as a technique to get rid of it, but because you stopped feeding it. You stopped giving it the resistance and attention it needs to maintain itself. So, what did the ancients actually do? They practiced presence, not as a method, not as a technique to achieve something, but as a return to what's real. They asked themselves constantly, what's actually happening right now? Not the story about what might happen, not the memory of what happened before, but this moment, exactly as it is. And when they looked closely at this moment, they found that it was almost always okay. Maybe not perfect, maybe not what they wanted, but okay, manageable, breathable. The disaster was always in thought, never in reality. Reality was just this: breathing, sensing, being aware. Everything else was mental addition. This practice of presence wasn't about feeling peaceful or calm or blissed out. It was about seeing clearly, seeing that thought is thought, sensation is sensation, and neither is you. You are the awareness that notices both, and that awareness is never threatened, never damaged, never anxious. It simply observes whatever arises and passes. When you rest in that awareness, even for a moment, everything changes. Not because the anxiety disappears, but because you realize you're not the anxious one. You're the space in which anxiety appears. And space can't be harmed by what appears within it. The sky isn't damaged by storms. The screen isn't affected by what plays on it. You, in your essential nature, are untouched by the weather of mind and emotion. This is the ancient fix, not a technique, not a practice, not something you do, but something you see. A shift in perspective that changes everything without changing anything. Anxiety can still arise. It probably will. That's what minds do. But you're no longer imprisoned by it. You're free, not because the experience changed, but because you stopped believing the story that the experience means something is wrong. Here's what this looks like in practice. Next time anxiety arises, don't fight it. Don't try to breathe it away or think positive thoughts. Just notice it. Feel where it is in your body. Notice the thoughts that accompany it. And then ask yourself, right now, in this actual moment, what's the threat? Not the imagined future threat, but right now. Most of the time, you'll find there isn't one. You're safe. You're breathing. Life is happening. The threat exists only in thought. And when you see this clearly, repeatedly, the pattern starts to shift. Not because you made it shift, but because you stopped maintaining it with belief and resistance. The ancients lived with the same minds we have, the same tendency toward worry and fear and imagining disaster. But they didn't add suffering on top of suffering. They didn't fight with reality. They didn't think that uncomfortable internal experiences meant something was wrong with them. They simply let mental weather be weather and lived their lives in the only place where life actually happens. Right here, right now. This moment doesn't need anxiety to be complete. It's already whole, already okay, exactly as it is. The anxiety is just a visitor, a passing pattern, mental weather moving through. You don't have to make it leave. You don't have to make it stay. You just notice it's there, the way you notice clouds in the sky, and continue living. That's the ancient fix. Not fixing anything at all, but seeing clearly enough that nothing needs fixing. Just this moment, just this breath, just this aware presence that you actually are. Always here, always calm, always free, even when anxiety visits. Especially when anxiety visits. If this video changed something in your understanding, write in the comments, "I am the space." Write it as your reminder that you're not the weather, you're the sky. Nobody,